We're recording. Excellent. Okay. Back up here. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. We're going to talk about structured data and SEO. Before we get started, one question I wanted to just put to you is, who is currently working with schema.org vocabularies and schemas in your sites? Okay. All right, cool. So there's a few of us, but that's about what I expected. So what we're going to do is talk at a high level about what this stuff is and why we care, okay? Let's go ahead and get started. SEO magic. Like my magic slide. I had to have like one sparkly magic slide. So we're done with that part now. Hi, my name is Kat. I am a long-time resident of Austin, so I'm very excited to be here in California for a Bay Area Drupal camp. In terms of my role, my background is in solutions architecture, engineering, and I'm passionate about strategy. So I am a data nerd in my personal life. I like to put things in things. I cannot be allowed in your container store, so that is why this particular topic is a lot of fun for me. So I'm glad you guys are here today to go through this. I started working with Drupal specifically just over 10 years ago. I have been in the open source space for most of my career. Some Drupal, some WordPress, some front end, some back end. So a wide range of experience with the platform. Was out of Drupal for a while, but with D8, I started getting back involved, especially since joining Canopy as a director of engineering. So lots of my team here today, they're working with me and primary organizers of back end as well. So it's a little bit about me. We are passionate about our technologies at Canopy. So I decided I had to drop a couple of conversations. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to start with what is structured data. So this is one of those buzzword terms that gets kicked around a lot, but it's a fairly opaque topic. So we're going to start with definition of that, and then why we should care about it. So why do we use structured data on our websites, if we're using structured data on our websites? Structured data comes in a number of different formats. All of them are valid. So we're going to touch on the three major formats of structured data that are currently used on the web. And then we're going to touch on how to use these things within Drupal 8, what tools are currently available to you to make it at least easier to pull structured data, market more information into your site. If you've got questions as we go, please feel free to stop me. I want this to be as interactive as possible to make sure I'm giving you what you What is structured data? All right. So when we're talking about structured data, this all goes to the concept of the semantic web, which is a very old idea, that we provide meta information about the content that's on the web to help explain the contents. This can be, there's a number of different facets to this, right? It's everything from making sure that you have semantic page tags. So, for example, we all talk about heading structures with regards to accessibility and SEO, right? And making sure that if you were to turn off all the CSS on your site, it's going to read like an unstyled Word document. That's part of it. So structuring, identifying things as what they are from a tagging perspective. Structured data is the same thing, but it's a bit at a more meta level. It can apply to a single element on your page or to the page in its entirety. So it can be everything from the contact information block in your footer to an overall announcement of the fact that you're looking at a recipe. Okay. It is a very, very highly structured, machine-oriented, hierarchical structure. Structured data is not made for people. It is made for search engines. It's made for machines. So when it comes to us looking through this information, parsing it, making sense of it, it can be a little bit opaque. And as I mentioned, it's definitely a core part of the semantic web and is an initiative that has been underway for many, many years in many, many different aspects. Really starting with RDF, moving forward from there. So, okay, if it's this crunchy and data-oriented, and this kind of crunchy machine-oriented stuff, why do we use it? Well, because it's crunchy and machine-oriented, search engines love it. Absolutely love it. In fact, schema.org, which is the standard vocabulary for structured data, was created by the search engines. The original schema.org standard was founded by our big three plus Yandex. And it gives them this highly repeatable structured information that they can rely on to help them when they're rendering result sets, figuring out how pages on the web are related to one another and how the information within that page is related to your query. Okay? Thereby making it easy for them to understand. The one thing I do want to level set up front is we're going to talk about Google a lot today. Okay? Yes, the other search engines use it. Yes, all my examples come from Google. But I want to make sure that I make it clear up front that schema.org, as we get into the various schema that are available in that vocabulary, and I'm going to level set on those terms as we go, just to make sure we're all speaking the same language, has a lot of required data and optional data that don't sync up with what Google considers to be required and optional as you go through this process. So Google's got a great introduction to structured data that they have available, where you can really dive in depth, and these links are in the presentation, really dive into depth as to how and where they parse this information and what they consider to be required. And it will differ from the things that you're looking at on schema.org if you dive into the original source material. When does it matter? So, structured data is very much a rabbit hole, okay? Once you start getting involved in this infinite ability to nest categorizations of items, you can spend a lot of time doing it. But the reality is that, certainly with Google, with the large search engines, there's only a subset of the types of items that they're really doing something. So if you're working with, obviously, identity information about your business, both at a corporate level and for local businesses, it's critical to look at these things. For articles, if you are maintaining course data in higher education, there are some special treatments for that type of information if you're marketing your courses in a specific way. Events and also careers, I'm actually going to show some of that because Google has now built an extremely sophisticated interface for job searches, etc. And then, recipes, products, music, kind of the standard things that we're used to seeing treated in a special way in a search engine interface. But this list is always changing. They're always running betas with limited organizations or artists testing out new features, especially around, right now I'm seeing it mostly multimedia. So multimedia assets that are marked up with certain types of structured data, trying to experiment with making search engine play features and things like that. So this list is always changing in terms of what they're really looking at. But I would say for where we are right now, this is a pretty good starting point. So search engine usage, what do they do with this stuff? Really what they do with this stuff is featured placement. Everybody loves featured placement, right? That's why we're here. What does that look like? Well, it takes a number of different forms. And it is, I will say, very hard to separate this topic from accelerated mobile pages, which is probably another buzz term that you've heard, especially around SEO. I'm not going to get into AMP today. I'd be happy to talk about it with you some other time. But some of these features are very much targeted at, okay, if you've got an AMP version of your page and you've marked up your structured data in this way, we're going to do something special with it. So what does featured placement look like? Well, it takes a number of different formats. You've got your enhanced results, enhanced search result listings. So I love to cook. We're going to look at recipes a lot today because I figured pictures of food, right, are always fun, at least for me. So we've all seen this, right? You've probably all used this. All of a sudden, you have certain results on the page in Google that give you star ratings and cook times and the number of people that reviewed them. And they have cute little thumbnails. How are they doing that? This is how they're doing that. So the examples I'm showing in this section are marked up using JSON-LD, which is one of the approaches you could take to formatting data for schemas. And we're going to walk through all of them. But as you can see here, this is a JSON object that actually describes all of the meta information about a recipe. It's got all of your cook time. It's got your ingredient list. It's got interaction statistics, things like how many people have commented on this item. So this meta information you provide about the overall page contents is what enables Google to take that and do something special with it. Google provides a structured data testing tool. So again, this is just an example, and I've got the links for this in there as well, as you start experimenting with structured data and playing with it. This is an opportunity for you to see the left is your raw input, the right is going to be how Google is viewing that information. So again, you can see how it's parsing out everything from this object. Knowledge graphs, knowledge panels, these are another thing I'm sure we have all seen in Google. Some companies have figured out how to get their customer service name and all of their social profiles and their logo into this cute little box that shows up on the right-hand side of the page when people are looking for information about that brand. How are they doing it? Structured data. When you are marking up contact information on your website, you place this meta information around it into your page. Google can take that and it can do something with it. Carousels. I see this sometimes on desktop. I see it more often on mobile. And again, let's face it, Google is notoriously a black box. So I can't give you an algorithm for exactly how to get something to show up. All right. I can tell you that taking these approaches and taking the time to do this stuff makes it more likely that your results will show up in these scenarios. That's about all I can say. On mobile specifically, you'll see this carousel pattern used a lot on Google. Typically, it's groupings of accelerated mobile pages, because they're going to weight that content more heavily. But you'll get the ability to have these kind of interactive groupings of items and have your content displayed in that card context. Again, how are they doing it? Same stuff. This is one I wanted to share because we've all seen those results, but depending on how deep you go in your interactions with search engines, Google especially has started to provide some very interesting interactive content. So what that means is they've created these immersive search experiences that, as people are exploring content within Google, they can go much deeper than you might think before they ever actually get to your website. So, more and more we're seeing people are interacting with your content, they're interacting with your brand way outside the context of your website. And so experiences like this mean that when those folks actually get to a direct touch point with your brand, they're already a much more highly qualified lead than they would have been coming in. And you may not even realize how much upfront consideration content they've consumed before they get there. How are they doing it? You can mark up a job listing. It's the same sort of data format, it's just a different scheme. This was another one I just thought I would do because this is one I play with a lot. I'm also a music lover. If you are doing product-based things, especially, say, selling music, selling albums, depending on how discography and albums are marked up, people can go in, they can explore the contents of your album, they can get all kinds of meta information about things that they care about, so by the time they get to your product listings, they're already primed to buy a sale. They've done all the upfront research. Well, guess what? It's because you can mark up a music album. This looks like magic, right? And it's super cool, and it's so much fun, and there's nothing that I find more rewarding than seeing sites I've worked on where we've put the time in to do structured data perform well from a search engine perspective. However, I will say, and I will caution as we go through this, you get out of structured data what you put into it. As I mentioned, it's a rabbit hole. You can mark up teeny tiny nested components of all kinds of things. You can mark up all kinds of things that search engines don't really actually care about. You can take this really, really far, but it is labor intensive. And while the JSON-LD examples we're looking at in terms of forward-looking, my opinion, are the way to go, and they're going to be less invasive and less time intensive from an implementation standpoint. It's still a lot of work to do this. So really think about when and where it makes sense. Structured data formats. I've touched on JSON-LD, but it's the most recent iteration of this, and it's not the only version of this in use. So I wanted to cover off on a couple of other things to let you kind of get a look at the various options available for marking up your content with structured data. You've heard me say this a lot. Who's ever actually visited schema.org? Okay, more people than I would have thought. Excellent. It's horrible, isn't it?
Yes!
It's terrifying. It makes absolutely no sense.
Wait, who's decided not to use structured data after visiting schema.org? Just me? Just me.
Barrier to entry, right? So before we dive into schema.org and all of these markup systems, first, let's talk about vocabulary. Okay? When we talk about schemas, things get very dense and very confusing very quickly. And you'll find that even if you're out on Stack Overflow trying to get help from folks doing this, nomenclature gets confused. So I want to level set up front about when I'm using terminology, what I'm actually talking about. So schema.org is what we call a vocabulary. Okay? Very similar to Drupal, right? So it is a vocabulary of schemas. Make sense? So each schema is a term in this vocabulary. A schema is the definition of a type of a thing. So if you start in schema.org, it's one of the things I actually think is kind of cute about schema.org, and I guess I have strange definitions of what's cute. But everything starts with a thing. Like if you actually look at the giant nested hierarchy on schema.org, the first thing you're going to talk about is a thing. The thing is the item you're marking up on the page, okay, or that you're talking about on the page. I hate to say marking up because, well, it's historically been marking up. With JSON-LD, you're not marking it up. So, as we mentioned, that item can be contact information at the bottom of your page, or it can be the entire page, the primary page content, right? It sort of depends on what you're doing. Each item has a type. That type could be a recipe, album, an article, it could be an organization. And those types then have properties associated with them that are specific to the type. Okay. We've touched on a number of different examples that barely scratches the surface. There is an enormous number of schemas associated with the schema.org vocabulary. And that's actually one of the implementation challenges when we look at automation of solutions for this type of data. It's just a faster way of solving it. Schemas are hierarchical. So if you come from an object-oriented background or in a CSS background, you can extend previous classes. So for example, if you're a corporation, you have all properties associated with generic things. Then you have organizations, and then you have the properties associated with corporations, which are a type of organization, which is a type of thing. Okay? And I think that's part of where schema.org itself is kind of confusing. But just know that you're inheriting those properties as you go through the list. And you do have the ability to interlink these objects. So you end up having your thing, which is an organization of type corporation, which has a contact, which is a person, which is a different type of thing, okay? But you can nest those person objects within the context of your organization, and that's what gets you things like customer service numbers and contact people on knowledge bases. Clear as mud? Okay. And as mentioned, we are looking mostly at JSON-LD examples here for reasons I'll go into, but it's not the only way to do it. Any of these examples I'm about to walk through are valid structured data markup, and you can do whatever makes sense for you. Let's start with RDFa, which is kind of the oldest of the big three. I always like to know what these acronyms stand for. It's a pet peeve of mine when we throw around acronyms and don't actually talk about what they are. So RDFa is Resource Description Framework in Attributes. as you might expect. It adds attributes to your existing HTML markup, so properties in your markup, that help define the thing that we're talking about, the item that we're talking about. Pros of things like RDFA is that there's no data redundancy. You're working within the markup and within the structure of the content you've already created, okay? So you're basically just providing additional meta information around that element, and it stays in the context of the thing that we're talking about, which is nice. It's not abstracted. It keeps it with the data itself. So here's an example of RDFA. This looks different, right? But it's essentially telling us the same thing. We've got our vocabulary, which is schema.org. This is a typed article, and then we go through and we have properties associated with the content that we're outputting. Each of these properties maps to the property that we were talking about under the schema.org schema type. Okay. So as you can see, this keeps all of you've got meta information that occurs in line with your content, but it stays with the content that it's talking about. Considerations of this approach. It requires extra markup. As we all know, when you're theming, that's not always the easiest. Okay? Arbitrary extra markup in your text, in your content. And it's not very human readable. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you just sit down and try to read through the code and figure out what the heck the thing is that we're talking about. So another approach that we can take is microdata. Microdata is a whole lot like RDFA. Basically, it's just the same horse, different color. Okay. It was actually formatted. Trivia originally used on schema.org, but when you go to schema.org now and you're looking for examples of how to implement structured data, you can see all three of these available to you. Microdata example. So this is where we get into item scope, and so this is where, in history, a lot of terminology on schema.org comes from, is from microdata syntax. But again, we're still talking about it's a type of article. We have item prompts. They map to the same property names we were just talking about. RDFA, so this hopefully starts to look familiar. Okay. Again, it's got the same structural flow as RDFA. I think to inject markup that isn't actually, well, it's highly semantically meaningful, but it's not, it's just cut there. It's still a little bit tricky to implement, and it's still not very people-friendly. Right? So that brings us to JSON-LD, which is the newest player in this space. It has a very different approach. JSON-LD stands for JavaScript Object Notation for Linked Data. Okay. Properly done, JSON-LD gets injected into the head of your document. Great thing about it, and really the reason that I think ultimately this is where we're headed, this is what we're going to be doing moving forward, doesn't affect your page markup. So nothing in the way that you're structuring your pages has to change to be able to leverage JSON-LD. Because it's a JavaScript object, it's a lot more human readable. So in terms of proofing yourself, it's a lot, I find it much easier to deal with. Because when I'm trying to get all of my schemas and my properties nested correctly, and I'm kind of slipping them into my markups or wherever I can, validating my work, I find a lot more challenging than just reading object notation. Let's face it, the real reason this is also where we're going is because this is what Google likes. And we all know if Google likes it, we do it, right? So Google prefers the JSON-LD format, especially when we're dealing with accelerated mobile pages. But it's recommended overall. So, I see confusion. Concerns? No? Okay. The thing I don't like about JSON-LD, well, the only thing I don't like about it is, as a content purist, it creates redundant data in your page. Okay, so you're going to take all the same content that you've got further down in the markup, and you're going to repeat yourself. Not ideal, not a disaster. It's just something to think about. I think that the pros of it certainly outweigh the cons. But, and here's an example of a very, very basic article JSON-LD. So So as you can see, reading through this and understanding we're talking about, you know, interaction types, name of our article, author of our article, type article. This is a lot easier to read for a human to parse through and validate and make sure that we've got all the right bits in the right places than dealing with attributes in your markup. But we still have to ask the question, did we do it right? Because once we start implementing this stuff, it does matter that it's done correctly. Because if you miss required properties, search engines are going to ignore you. So you've got to make sure that everything that they think is required and most of what they say is recommended is actually there. So did we do it right? Well, the good news is that Google has the answer, and we've had a sneak peek at the answer, and that answer is their structured data testing tool. So this is super fun to play with, if you think this is fun, which I do. So you can take any bit of markup, and it will work for any of these structured data formats. It doesn't have to be JSON-LD. In fact, I think what I'm using in this example is RDFa. This example, interestingly, is what you get by default out of Drupal 8 using the core RDF. Okay. But yeah, so you can take any of these three styles of data definition, and you can run them through the style data. It doesn't matter what you're using. But it's great because on the other side of the page, you're going to actually see, okay, exactly how Google would parse your information. You can see where it yells at you, or maybe, you know, wants to subtly hint that you should maybe do it a different way. I will say it's buggy. There are things that I get false positives, rather false negatives, things where it'll flag an error in there. For the most part, itself. So what format do we use? Well, we kind of touched on this already. All of these are kind. That's the good news. So if your site's already using some of these things, you're like, oh, I don't want to have to rip all of this out and change to JSON-LD. Don't worry about it. You're fine. But when in doubt, if you're starting something new, I would take the attribute. So what about Drupal? Where does Drupal fit into all of this? Well, as a public service announcement, I will say, beyond having good, rich content, using metadata in any context is the most important thing you can do for the findability and searchability of your site, the shareability of your site. So that's everything from open graph data for social platforms to metadata, meta descriptions and titles that really give search engines a clue as to what your content is about. So if you've got well-structured content that's rich and useful to people, and you provide metadata on top of it, it's the biggest boost you can have for your site. Beyond it. So what are our options in Drupal 8? Okay, well there actually is an RDF module in core. So I went in and played with that, just kind of see what it would do. For me, it didn't validate from Google's perspective out of the box. Now again, remember, Google and schema.org do not think that it's not a one-for-one thing. What Google wants is not necessarily what schema says is required, etc. So, and you can't really define the type of thing. Bottom line was that I found, and I'd love to know if y'all have had a different experience with the core RDF module than I have. What I found is you really can't extend or customize it without starting to write code. So I set that aside. It does produce RDFa, so it's a valid format. But I kind of set it aside and said, all right, well, is there something more turnkey out there that we can use to get further down this path? Which brings us to the schema.org meta tag module. Is everybody in the room familiar with the meta tag module? Space. Yes, no? Okay. It is, in my humble opinion, the place to start getting metadata onto your site. Schema.org meta tag module is an extension of meta tag. And it's built by Karen, who's an amazing developer of Ullabot. And it's an extension of the meta tag module. So if you're familiar with meta tag and you know how to implement that, you know how to implement this. Okay? It provides the schema.org schemas, the object types, for a limited subset of the types. As we established, you know, there's this huge network of schema there. Out of the box, this is going to come with a few, but it does provide the architecture to extend the type of thing that's available. So if you have a custom scenario, you can go and implement whatever schema it is on schema.org that your site needs, and you can extend this module and hopefully contribute that. So this makes it feasible to, and then this module outputs JSON-LD into your page, which was really what we were trying to get to. So this is what I consider at this point to be the most viable solution. It's still not completely out of the box, and like we said, this is so finicky that it's kind of hard to get there. But this is a great starting point, and I'm very excited to see where this project goes. Has not been in the wild very long, so please do go and check it out. And contribute your insights to it. So, that's basically it. So we covered off what structure data is, why we use it, despite the pain, the formats that you can use to implement this on your site, and then a little bit about Drupal and solutions there. It's unfortunate there's not something that's totally turnkey, but maybe that's your opportunity. Basic resources we talked about. I will be posting these slides after our chat today, so you will have access to all of this on the back end. That's it. That's all I got. So, questions, feedback. You can talk now. You can email me. Hit me up on Twitter. I'd love to talk about this stuff. Yeah.
You mentioned that it was normally injected into the head of the documents. Can it be used and not penalized in the body? Thinking one-off pages. I have one page of my site that requires this. Granted, I could go with a meta tag and set up an exclusion for one tag. It seems sense to me just to stick it in a block and stick it on that page.
I'm actually not sure.
Okay.
I'd have to go experiment with it. There are a lot of things that are recommended to be in the head, right?
Sure.
That don't actually have to be in there. This is one I'm actually not sure about.
I'm also thinking like single-page apps where you're not reloading the head, but you are reloading more and more content on the page.
I know that I haven't worked with this in a single app context, single page app context. I do know that it is considered to be obviously the preferred approach when working in that context. It's a really good question, which I don't have an answer. The next time I get to stop, I don't know. Yeah.
So using RDFa and stuff, you can tag inside the markup. So if you're displaying multiple like teasers of an item, you can display it there. Is there a way to do that with JSON-LD?
So generally speaking, you don't want to mark up teaser lists.
Okay.
You want to mark up the actual canonical piece of content.
Gotcha.
So you don't, otherwise it gets redundant.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense for how much this actually helps boost your page rank?
Oh, isn't that always the question?
Right?
No, so how heavily it's weighted, I don't know. Like I said, it does position you for placement in more featured contexts. Okay, and it provides richer information about your page, which for which is a very critical component of PageRank, is we're trying to understand how high quality and rich the content is. So the more information you can give people that describes the content of the page, better off you're going to be. In terms of the weighting algorithm, I'm not really sure. I try to keep it really simple as far as that, and just focus on the quality of the content.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Anything else? No? Oh!
What are the ethics of this handoff from all our data to Google and then bring the help along with the researchers? Why are we a bunch of sheep like
That's a one.
A bunch of sheep, and I'm the last part.
I'm not kidding. Right? There actually needs to be laws about this, because this is getting stupid. I work for an educational website. Our traffic went down because Google changed their algorithm. If you look about alternate going down because of algorithm changes. And it's very frustrating to be putting out information and not being able to find it. Sure, you can put the SEO here, but really we're in a situation where a few companies are controlling our data and creating monopolies, and we're going along with it. I think we all should think long and hard about that, really, and the ethics of it. So, that's all. But it's a great presentation.
So maybe, okay, so if they're interacting with your data away from your website, is it beneficial to that they do interact with your data through Google rather than going directly to your website where they have the experience that you want them to have? You know what I mean?
Funding for the people creating the content. How is alternative press getting their advertising if Google's holding their stuff away from the places where the advertising revenue is generated? That's the issue, right?
I just want to quickly butt in here. We are people that like to help people. That's the mantra. That's just why I run Camp, is because I want to help our community get together and ask questions like this. So this is a very short period of time, but we always want to be available afterwards if you have questions. We have a bunch of like checklists for pre-launching, or checklists for accessibility, or checklists for health and stuff. So if y'all do want extra help after, I'll leave these here, and if you want to go ahead and just leave your email, it's mostly just maybe to connect you with the people that are experts. There's a lot of people, not only in this room or in this community. If we can't help you, we'll find someone who can. So if you do want extra help, just leave your email and then we'll be happy to help you. Okay, so I'll leave a few on each table. All right, thanks.
I know, no, and I hear you.
Working hard on my form over there.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much.
I know, and I used up that, actually it was really funny, so I was trying to get all my screen samples, and I can't get Google.
No,
Oh.
that's serious. This actually needs to be
We're running into the same problem the oil industry initially had. The Rockefeller stepped in and said, I'm going to kill the chaos in the industry, which lets things fluctuate from $50 a barrel down to 10 cents a barrel. And through his monopoly kind of behavior, he had the structure to that industry and that market. He dealt with the damage that you saw. So you're seeing the same pattern, but it's existing for the same natural market reasons.
right. Well, businesses naturally want to run, and if they have the ability to, they do.
So using,
Of course. But we need
you can start to do that, right?
access to data, we need users with access to data, and we need that, as you mentioned, users hitting where our ads are to make that flow, to stop keeping the pressure on us, to keep us from growing where we need to, and being able to respond and critique and grow that. So Google's doing the same thing.
And that's why ultimately I think they'll.
The exact same way. Well, maybe not as mean-spirited, but
But yeah, so you just basically take this.
if they weren't leading this, it would be really chaotic. But you're right, this is a good inflection point to insert that conversation and start to build. That'd be great.
Margaritas. Awesome. We'll send you that. Thank you.
More and more, you have data so that you get better services. They don't really need our website. We're doing all this data.
Mike.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Mike. Come in.
Great comment.
I was gonna